You flip on the bathroom light at midnight and there it is, a small lizard, frozen on the ceiling, staring back at you like it's the one who's surprised. You blink. It's gone, vanished into a crack you didn't even know existed. It feels like an invasion. It isn't. The real explanation has nothing to do with your house being dirty or broken, and everything to do with a survival strategy that's been perfected for over 100 million years. Your brain wants a simple story. Lizards like bugs. Bugs are here. Lizards come. That story is true, but it explains almost nothing about why they're so impossible to keep out, why they always seem to know exactly where the gaps are, and why killing one never seems to solve the problem for long. The bigger part of the story lives in the lizard's feet. Have you ever wondered how a gecko walks straight up glass, upside down across your ceiling, without a single claw or drop of sticky residue? It's not suction. It's not glue. It's something stranger. Each toe on a gecko's foot is covered in millions of microscopic hair-like structures called setae, and each seta splits into hundreds of even smaller branches called spatula. At that scale, something remarkable happens. The distance between the gecko's foot and the surface becomes small enough for a weak molecular attraction called a van der Waals force to take hold. It's the same force that exists between any two objects placed close enough together, just usually too faint to notice. Multiply it across millions of tiny contact points, and it becomes strong enough to hold an entire animal's body weight to a pane of glass. Biologist Kellar Autumn spent years studying exactly this mechanism, and his research, done in collaboration with biomechanics researcher Robert at UC Berkeley, revealed that a gecko's foot could theoretically support enormous loads relative to its size using this method alone. No stickiness required, no effort required either in the way you'd expect. The attachment happens automatically the moment the foot makes contact and detaches instantly when the toe peels away at a specific angle, which is why a gecko can sprint across your ceiling without ever getting stuck. That single adaptation explains why sealing your home against lizards is so much harder than sealing it against almost anything else. A gap the width of a credit card is enough. A gecko doesn't need a hole. It needs a surface, any surface, angled correctly enough to get a grip, and it can walk in through spaces you would never think to check. Here's the part that reframes everything. The lizard isn't actually interested in your house. It's interested in what your house attracts. Every window, every porch light, every glowing rectangle of a television visible through a curtain at night is doing something you probably never noticed. It's broadcasting a signal to the insect world. Moths, mosquitoes, gnats, and beetles are drawn to artificial light through a phenomenon scientists still debate the exact mechanism of, but the effect is well documented. Your house, lit up after dark, becomes one of the most reliable insect concentrations for miles, and insects are exactly what a lizard evolved to hunt. Herpetologist Aaron Bauer, who has spent decades studying gecko taxonomy and documented hundreds of gecko species across the world, has noted that many common house-dwelling gecko species didn't originally live near humans at all. They lived on tree bark, rock faces, and cave walls, hunting insects using the same climbing skills that now work perfectly on your drywall and windowsills. When humans began building structures with flat vertical surfaces and, more importantly, structures that glowed with light after dark, we accidentally built the single most attractive hunting ground a gecko could imagine. Consistent shelter, stable temperature, and a self-restocking buffet of insects drawn in by your own porch light every single night. You didn't invite a lizard into your home. You invited its food source, and the lizard simply followed the signal. There's a deeper reason too, one that has nothing to do with insects at all. Geckos, like most reptiles, cannot generate their own body heat. Every action they take, digestion, movement, even the speed at which they can react to a predator, depends on absorbing heat from their environment. A house maintains a narrow, stable temperature range all year, radically more consistent than the wild swings of an exposed rock face, baking in the sun by day and losing all that heat by night. Warm pipes, sunlit windowsills, the residual heat behind a refrigerator. To a cold-blooded animal built entirely around finding thermal stability, your home isn't an intrusion. It's closer to an ideal climate-controlled habitat that happens to also be full of food. This is why a single lizard rarely stays a single lizard for long. If the conditions that drew one gecko in remain unchanged, more will follow the same signals, the same lights, the same insect concentrations, the same gaps around window frames and door seals. You're not dealing with one determined intruder. You're dealing with an entire ecosystem responding to consistent conditions you're unintentionally advertising every single night. There's a communication layer to this too, one most people never notice because it happens at a frequency and volume easy to dismiss as background noise. Many house gecko species chirp, click or squeak, sounds used to mark territory, warn off rival males, or signal to potential mates. Aaron Bauer's taxonomic surveys have documented that vocalization patterns differ distinctly between gecko species, meaning that quiet chirping sound you occasionally hear after dark isn't random. It's a specific, repeatable signal, refined over evolutionary time, being used exactly as intended in an environment its owner considers perfectly suitable habitat. If a gecko is calling from inside your wall, it isn't confused about where it is. It's behaving as though it has successfully claimed territory, because from its perspective, it has. That claim isn't as irrational as it might sound. Compare the risk profile of your living room to the risk profile of a tree trunk outside. Outside, a gecko faces birds, snakes, larger lizards, and sudden temperature swings between blazing midday heat and cold night air. Inside your home, most of those predators simply don't exist. The temperature barely moves throughout the day, and the insect supply is more reliable than almost anywhere in the wild. From a purely evolutionary cost-benefit standpoint, your living room isn't a strange place for a gecko to end up. It's arguably one of the safer, more resource-stable environments it could possibly find. Now here's the twist that makes this whole situation stranger than it first appears. Lizards, in one form or another, have been perfecting this exact hunting and climbing strategy since before flowering plants existed. Fossil evidence of gecko-like reptiles stretches back over 100 million years, meaning these animals were already climbing vertical surfaces and hunting insects using specialized toe structures while dinosaurs were still the dominant life on Earth. The specific adhesive setae structure seen in modern geckos represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement, adapting and readapting long before a single house, window, or artificial light bulb ever existed to exploit. Your house is not a challenge to that system. It's the newest environment a 100-million-year-old hunting strategy has ever needed to adapt to, and it adapted almost instantly because the fundamentals never changed. Find warmth, find insects, climb toward both using a mechanism perfected long before there was anything called architecture to climb. So why does it feel so unsettling? Because unlike most pests, a lizard doesn't hide its presence completely. It's fast enough to vanish the moment you notice it, visible enough to unsettle you when you don't expect it, and quiet enough that you rarely hear it arrive in the first place. That combination, present but nearly untraceable, is exactly what makes it feel like your home has been breached, rather than simply visited by an animal doing exactly what its biology has told it to do for 100 million years. Here's something else most people never consider. The lizard you're trying to remove is very likely working in your favor. A single house gecko can consume dozens of insects in a night, including mosquitoes and other pests far more capable of making you sick than a lizard ever could. Removing every gecko from a home doesn't remove the insects that attracted it. It simply removes the one predator that was quietly keeping their numbers in check. This is why the most effective long-term solution isn't chasing down and removing individual lizards. It's addressing the two things that made your home attractive in the first place: reducing exterior lighting or switching to yellow-tone bulbs that attract fewer insects cuts off the food signal at its source. Sealing obvious gaps around windows, vents, and door frames removes easy entry points, even though a determined gecko can still exploit surprisingly small openings given its climbing ability. Removing standing water and excess vegetation close to the house reduces the insect population that drew them in to begin with. Change the conditions, and the lizards that show up have less reason to stay, because the actual target was never the house. It was always what the house was inadvertently providing. Here's the part worth sitting with. Every time you've swatted at a lizard racing across your wall, or sealed a single crack hoping that would be the end of it, you were addressing the visible symptom of a system that's been running successfully since long before humans built the first wall to seal. The gecko on your ceiling isn't malfunctioning, it's succeeding. Using a toe structure fine-tuned across tens of millions of years, following a food signal your own house is broadcasting every night, absorbing warmth from a structure that mimics the ideal thermal environment its ancestors sought out long before there were kitchens, bathrooms, or porch lights to seek out instead. Consider what that lizard on your ceiling has actually survived to get there. Mass extinction events that reshaped which animals dominated the planet did not erase gecko-like reptiles from the fossil record. Continental drift, ice ages, and shifting climates across 100 million years did not stop this lineage from refining the exact molecular attachment mechanism still holding that lizard steady above your head right now. It did not travel far, evolutionarily speaking, to find your bathroom ceiling. In evolutionary terms, your house is simply the newest surface a 100-million-year-old climbing strategy has ever needed to grip. and it adapted to grip it almost immediately. So, the next time you flip on a light and find a lizard frozen there, staring back at you before it vanishes into a gap you'll never find, remember what's actually happening. You didn't discover an invader. You just illuminated one more surface in a hunting strategy that was already ancient before your house, your street, or your entire species existed to build a light switch in the first place.